78% of people who save their first $5,000 are in nearly the same financial position 5 years later, not because they spent it, not because something went wrong, because they stopped. The account hit 5,000. The anxiety eased, the urgency disappeared, and the money just sat there doing nothing while inflation quietly chipped away at it every single year. That number is worth sitting with for a second, because if saving $5,000 already took real discipline, the idea that it leads nowhere for most people is genuinely uncomfortable, and it should be. This video is going to show you exactly what to do with $5,000 to turn it from a cushion into a system that actually builds over time, not theory. A specific sequence of decisions in the right order with the math behind each one. My name is Alex, and if you have ever hit a savings milestone and felt that strange mix of pride and uncertainty about what comes next, stay with this, because once we understand why most people stall, the path forward is clearer than you might expect. The 22% who actually move forward treat $5,000 not as the goal, but as the starting block. They follow a sequence. And that sequence is not complicated once you see it laid out clearly. That sequence starts before the investing, before the growth, before any of that. It starts with building your shield. And that is exactly where we begin. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. What is the point of building something if the first unexpected bill can knock it all down? That is not a hypothetical. That is the situation most people are actually in, and they do not realize it until it happens. So before we talk about growing anything, we need to talk about what keeps it from collapsing. Because the biggest mistake people make when they first get their hands on $5,000 is skipping straight to the exciting part, the investing, the growth, the compound returns. And look, that instinct makes sense. You have worked hard to save this money. You want to put it to work. But here is what that impatience costs you. Say Marcus, a 32-year-old project coordinator in Nashville, does exactly that. He puts his full $5,000 into a brokerage account in January. Feels good. Feels like a move. Then in March, his transmission goes out. The repair bill comes in at $1,400. He does not have liquid cash, so he has two choices. Sell some of his investments at whatever price they happen to be that day, or put them on a credit card at 22% interest. Neither option is good. Both options are completely avoidable. That is not bad luck. That is a missing foundation. The stability fund is not a boring concept dressed up with a new name. It is the structural piece that makes everything else work. Its only job is to make sure that a flat tire, a surprise medical bill, or a slow month at work does not force you to make a bad financial decision at the worst possible moment. Not because those things might happen, because they will. Here's how you actually build it, and it happens in two stages. The first stage is the starter fund. You want to get somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account, not a regular savings account, a high-yield one. As of early 2026, the best high-yield savings accounts are paying around 4.5 to 5% annually. That is not going to make you rich, but it means your safety cushion is at least keeping pace with something instead of just sitting flat. This first layer handles the small stuff, the stuff that is annoying but not catastrophic. A broken phone, a copay, a car registration you forgot about. Once that layer is in place, you move to the second stage, the full reserve. This is 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses saved up, not your total lifestyle spend. Your essentials, rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, transportation, the non-negotiables. If you're spending $2,800 a month on the things you absolutely cannot cut, your full reserve target is somewhere between $8,400 and $16,800. That is a real number. It takes time to get there, and that is fine. The point is knowing what you are building toward. Now, why does this matter so much in the context of investing? Here's the mechanism. When the market drops, and it will drop, the people who panic and sell are almost never doing it because they want to. They are doing it because they need the cash. They have no cushion, they have no buffer. So they sell at the bottom, lock in the loss, and then watch the market recover without them. The stability fund is what keeps you in the game when things get uncomfortable. It is not passive. It is actively protecting every other financial decision you make. Think of it as the foundation that the whole structure sits on. Without it, you are one bad month away from undoing months of progress. With it, the bad month is just a bad month. Shield built, foundation in place. Now the dynamic shifts entirely, because once you are protected from the chaos of life, you can start looking at what else might be quietly working against you. And for a lot of people, there is something pulling money out of their hands every single month that never shows up in their investment account. That is the high interest debt conversation, and it is the one most people do not want to have. Most people think investing and paying off debt are two separate conversations. They are not. They are the same conversation, and which side you start on changes everything. Here is the uncomfortable math that most financial content glosses over. The stock market, measured by the S&P 500, has returned an average of roughly 10% annually over the long run. That is the number everyone talks about. That is the dream. But as of early 2026, the average credit card interest rate in the United States is sitting above 27%. That means if you are carrying a balance while trying to build an investment portfolio, you are not actually building anything. You are running on a treadmill. Money goes in one side and drains out the other faster than it arrived. It is not a wealth building problem. It is a math problem. Think about what that gap actually means in practice. Every dollar you have sitting in an index fund earning 10% is simultaneously being outrun by a debt growing at 27%. You are losing 17 cents on every dollar, every single year, just by choosing the wrong battle first. That is not investing. That is the illusion of investing, while the real damage happens quietly in the background. Let me give you a concrete picture of this. Daniel is a 38-year-old logistics manager in Columbus. He's been contributing $300 a month to his brokerage account for the past 2 years. Feels disciplined. Feels like he is doing the right thing. He also has $9,000 sitting on 2 credit cards at an average rate of 26%. In those same 2 years, his investment account has grown by roughly $690 in returns. His credit card balance, because he's only making minimum payments, has grown by about $4,000 in interest charges alone. He is proud of the account going up. He has not done the math on what is going down. That gap between $690 gained and $4,000 lost is the most expensive feeling of progress you can buy. Paying off high-interest debt is not just a responsible thing to do. It is the single highest return investment available to you right now. There is no index fund, no stock pick, no alternative asset that offers a guaranteed, risk-free, tax-free 26 to 27% return. Paying off a credit card at that rate does exactly that. The return is immediate. It does not require a good market. It does not require patience. It just requires paying it off. So how do you actually do it? You have to be deliberate about the order. The priority targets are what most people already know, but avoid looking at directly. Credit cards, payday loans, buy now, pay later balances that have rolled into interest. Any debt above 10% should be considered a high priority. You go after the highest rate first, put everything you can at it, keep minimums on the rest, and work down the list. This is not complicated. It just requires deciding that eliminating the drain matters more than the feeling of building something new. Now, not all debt belongs in this conversation. A fixed-rate mortgage under 5% is a different animal entirely. The math on that one is actually close enough that investing alongside it can make sense, depending on your situation. Same with a low-rate car loan or a subsidized student loan. The line is roughly anything above 8 to 10%. Below that, the decision gets nuanced. Above it, there is no real debate. Clear the toxic debt first. Then the growth side of this equation actually starts to work. And here is what changes once you do. Every dollar that was going toward interest charges is now free. It does not vanish, it gets redirected. And when you point that redirected money at the right vehicle, that is when the growth engine actually starts running, which brings us to the part most people came here for. Because once the bleeding has stopped and the foundation is solid, the next step is putting your money somewhere it can actually start compounding and working for you around the clock. There is a version of investing that requires you to be smart, fast, and constantly right. And then there is the version that has actually built most of the quiet wealth in this country. They are not the same thing, and most people are chasing the wrong one. Once the debt is cleared and the foundation is solid, the money that was bleeding out every month is now yours to direct. And the question is not whether to invest it. The question is where and in what form. So that time does the heavy lifting instead of you. For most people starting out, the answer is simpler than the financial industry wants it to seem. A low-cost index fund. Not a managed fund with a team of analysts charging you 1.5% a year to mostly underperform the market anyway. A simple, broad market index fund that tracks something like the S&P 500 or the total US stock market. When you buy into one of these, you're not betting on a single company. You're buying a small slice of hundreds of the largest, most established businesses in the American economy in a single transaction, one purchase. Instant diversification. The average expense ratio on a broad index fund from a provider like Vanguard or Fidelity sits below 0.1% annually as of 2026. That is less than $1 per year on every $1,000 you invest. The managed fund sitting next to it on the shelf might charge 15 times that, and the data consistently shows it will not outperform the index over a 20 or 30-year horizon. You are paying more for worse results. That is the fee conversation nobody has clearly enough. Now here is where the math gets worth paying attention to. Take someone like Priya, a 35-year-old marketing director in Austin. She clears her credit card debt and frees up $500 a month. She puts that $500 into a broad index fund every single month without exception. She does not try to time the market. She does not check it every week. She just lets it run. At a 7% average annual return, which is the inflation-adjusted long-run average for the US stock market, over 30 years, she will have contributed $180,000 of her own money. Her portfolio will be worth approximately $1.8 million. $180,000 in, $1.8 million out. The other $1.62 million came from compounding, from time, from doing nothing except not stopping. That is not a pitch. That is arithmetic. The principle underneath it is straightforward. Compounding means your returns generate their own returns. In the early years, it feels slow, almost invisible. In the later years, it accelerates in a way that seems almost unfair. The engine runs fastest at the end, which means the only thing that actually matters is starting early enough to reach that end. Every year you wait is not just a year of contributions missed. It is a year of compounding that cannot be recovered. So what does a reasonable starting allocation actually look like? There is no single right answer, but a useful framework for someone early in the process is a heavy core position in broad market index funds, somewhere around 70 to 80% of what you are investing. A smaller slice, maybe 10 to 15%, in sectors or individual companies you genuinely understand and believe in the long term. Some exposure to real estate, either through a real estate investment trust or a property, if that is accessible, rounding out the rest. And if you want a small speculative position in something higher risk, keep it small enough that losing all of it does not change your life. The point is not the exact percentages. The point is diversification, not as a buzzword. As a structural decision, that means no single event can destroy what you are building. The growth engine is running, but an engine only goes as far as the fuel you feed it. And that is where the next piece becomes more important than most people expect, because there is one investment that, especially early on, can outperform the market by a margin that is not even close. And it has nothing to do with picking the right stock. Nobody talks about this one clearly enough, and it is probably the highest return move available to someone in the early stages of building wealth, not because it is a secret, because it does not fit neatly into a portfolio tracker. The investment is you. Before you close this tab, thinking that sounds like motivational poster territory, stay with the math for a second, because this is not about mindset. It is about return on capital, and the numbers are hard to argue with. Your index fund, running at a 7% inflation-adjusted annual return, is a reliable long-term machine. Over decades, it is almost certainly the right place for your money. But in the short term, especially in the first few years, it is slow, deliberately slow. That is actually the feature, not the bug. But slow compounding on a small base is still a small number. $500 invested this year at 7% returns $35. That is not nothing, but it is not life-changing either. Now consider a different use of the same money. Jordan is a 31-year-old operations analyst in Denver. He has been investing consistently for about a year, and his portfolio is growing steadily, but his base salary has not moved in 3 years. He takes $2,000 and puts it toward a technical certification in data analysis, a skill his company has been hiring outside contractors to handle. 6 months later, he uses that credential to negotiate a salary increase of $9,000 annually. That $2,000 investment returned $9,000 in the first 12 months alone. That is a 450% return. No index fund is built for that. That is not an unusual story. It is actually a fairly conservative one. The mechanism here is leverage. When you increase your earning capacity, every dollar of additional income gets layered on top of everything else you are already doing. It does not replace the index fund, it feeds it. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is the raw material that your investment engine runs on. Widen that gap, and the whole system accelerates. Narrow it, and everything slows down regardless of how well your portfolio performs. So, what does this actually look like in practice? The skills that tend to generate the fastest return fall into a few clear categories: technical skills with direct market demand, things like data work, software tools, financial modeling, digital marketing, or automation; communication skills that command higher rates, particularly writing, presenting, and negotiation; and operational skills that make you difficult to replace in your current role, while also making you more valuable elsewhere. The delivery method matters less than people think. A structured online course, a professional certification, a part-time program at a community college, and direct mentorship from someone already doing the work. What matters is whether the skill has a verifiable market value and whether you can demonstrate it. Credentials help. A portfolio of actual work helps more. There is also a version of this that does not require a salary negotiation at all. Freelancing and consulting on the side, even at a modest rate, can generate meaningful additional income on hours that would otherwise be idle. A professional with a marketable skill charging $50 to $75 an hour for 10 hours of freelance work a month is looking at $6,000 to $9,000 a year in additional income before they have touched their day job. That money goes directly into the investment engine. It compounds alongside everything else. The honest framing is this: in the early years, your income is your most powerful financial variable. The market will do what the market does. Your earning capacity is the one input you actually have direct control over. Ignoring it in favor of obsessing over your asset allocation is like tuning a race car while running it on half a tank of fuel. Build the skill, widen the gap, feed the engine, and once all of that is moving in the right direction, there is one final layer that most people underestimate, because building wealth is one challenge. What threatens it once it exists is a completely different conversation. And that is exactly where we need to go next, into the mindset and discipline required to actually protect your progress for the long game. Here is something that does not get said enough. Most people who fail to build lasting wealth do not fail because they never started. They fail because something knocked them off course after they did, and they did not have the structure or the mindset to get back on track. Getting the system running is one challenge. Keeping it running is a completely different thing, and the threats are not always dramatic. They are not always a market crash or a job loss. Sometimes the thing that unravels years of progress is a convincing pitch at the wrong moment, a medical bill that was not planned for, or a single emotional decision made on a bad week in the market. None of those feels catastrophic in the moment. They just quietly undo what took years to build. The first threat is deception, and in 2026, this one is more aggressive than it has ever been. Algorithmic social media has made it extraordinarily easy to reach people at exactly the right moment of financial anxiety with exactly the wrong solution. Crypto schemes with guaranteed monthly returns. Private investment platforms promise 12 to 15% annually with no risk. Courses that teach you to flip obscure assets for passive income in 90 days. The packaging changes constantly. The math never does. The rule is simple, and it does not have exceptions. If a financial opportunity is promising returns that the broad market cannot consistently deliver, and delivering them without a clear, verifiable mechanism for how that is possible, it is not an opportunity. It is a transfer. Your money is moving from your account to someone else's, and the pitch is the tool that makes you hand it over willingly. The more urgent and exclusive it feels, the more certain that is. The second threat is health. This one is harder to talk about because it feels outside the scope of a financial conversation. But a single significant medical event without adequate insurance coverage can erase years of accumulated progress in a matter of months. The average cost of a 3-day hospital stay in the United States as of 2026 is around $30,000. An unexpected surgery can run 2 to 3 times higher than before insurance adjustments. Health insurance is not optional if you are serious about protecting what you are building. Disability insurance is worth understanding too, because your income is the engine that drives everything else. And most people have no plan for what happens if that engine stops. The third threat is the most personal one: impatience. Consider someone like Trevor, a 40-year-old sales manager in Charlotte, who has been investing consistently for 6 years. His portfolio has grown to just over $90,000. Then the market drops 18% over 3 months. His account is down to around $74,000. It feels like losing $16,000. It feels permanent. In a moment of genuine fear, he sells everything and moves to cash, telling himself he will get back in when things stabilize. He never finds the right moment to re-enter. The market recovers over the next 14 months. Trevor watches from the sidelines. What he lost was not just the $16,000 on paper. He lost the recovery, and the compounding on the recovery, and the years of momentum that cannot be rebuilt from a standing start at 42. That is not a failure of strategy. It is a failure of emotional management under pressure, and it is far more common than any bad stock pick. The market will go down. It has always gone down periodically, and it has always recovered. The investors who build real wealth across decades are not the ones who predicted every dip. They are the ones who stayed in the game when it felt most uncomfortable to do so. Discipline is not a personality trait you either have or do not have. It is a decision you make in advance. Before the bad week arrives, before the convincing pitch lands in your inbox, before the account balance looks wrong. The structure you build now is what makes the right decision easier when the pressure is highest. Protect the foundation, guard the engine, play the long game. And when you step back and look at everything we have covered, it all connects into something much simpler than it seemed at the start. $5,000 is not a destination. It never was. It is the first real proof that you can do this, that you have the discipline to save, to delay, to choose the harder path when the easier one was right there. That proof is worth more than the money itself, because the money is just the starting material. The system is not complicated once you see it clearly. Protect yourself before you grow. Eliminate what is working against you before you build what works for you. Let time and consistency do the work that urgency and impatience never can. Increase your earning capacity because the gap between what comes in and what goes out is the fuel that everything else runs on. And guard what you build with the same seriousness you used to build it. Most people who stay stuck do not lack information, but they lack follow-through when it gets uncomfortable. You now have both the map and the reason it works. There is one question worth sitting with after this. Once the system is running and the foundation is solid, how do you actually know when you have built enough? That is a harder question than it sounds, and it is worth exploring next.